Hello and welcome back to the Byline. A bit overdue this one. Unfortunately, PC issues and family stuff meant that we haven't been able to get on as regularly as we like. But we're back today, and we've got an interesting topic. So, me and Ben were down at St Andrews watching the Blues play their final game of the season, and we're going to talk a bit about the game um, towards the end. But there's other news that's coming out of Birmingham today, and that is that Blues are subject to having new ownership in the coming future. So I'm going to hand over to Ben and Paul just to go over the details, and then we'll give our thoughts on what this means for the club. So start with you, Paul. Firstly, if you can give us a bit about the buyout, what it means, what's happening, and what your opinions are.
Knight's Head Capital Management is the actual name of the company that is buying the Blues. Bought out, I think, is it 46%, which is 100% of the ground and so much of 20 odd percent of the actual club. Some American guy who is friends with Tom Brady is what YouTube throws up at you, worth a potential $9 billion or something. So it's looking like something that could be promising. But then on the other hand, the Chinese look promising too. And that didn't go well at all, did it? So
yeah,
I think the main thing at the moment is that there's going to be somebody different calling the shots down the Blues, which I think is a good thing all in all.
Yeah. So Ben, obviously, we spoke a little bit about this earlier, and the deal is kind of split, so they own 100% of the stadium, but they also hold the day-to-day management of the actual football club as well. So, Ben, what's your opinion on the takeover? What do you think it could mean for the club going forward? And also, is it the beginning of the end of Trillion?
The beginning of the end of the Trillion, hopefully, yeah. Hopefully we'll get a stadium name back to St Andrews, or something a bit.
It's already back to St Andrews.
Is it back there now officially?
I'm sure they dropped that a season or two ago.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, I mean, similar to what Paul said, it's a change that was needed. Obviously, the club's going stale, it's going wrong from top all the way to the bottom. This person is, his company is obviously valued at £9 billion. He's opened a company now to put it through the books, obviously here in the UK. Shelby Limited, is it? So
Shelby Companies Limited, which is the name of the companies in Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So effectively, it'd just be, let's import the money from one account to another account. Similar to kind of how Man City operate, I guess, in some format. But there's obviously multiple areas to it. So that he's not the only investor. So there's a Canadian investor which apparently is going for a large chunk of the remaining 54% or whatever it is. Which, if that materializes, yeah, obviously it's good for us. What do I think in 12 months? I think there's going to be one of two things. So they obviously talk about heavy investment. They want to build a new stadium which can hold European football. They want, promotion. They don't want to be in the championship. And you're not going to get an owner that buys a club and not say these things. So whilst you kind of take them with a pinch of salt, it is obviously quite optimistic for every Blues fan, because we haven't had any form of, something to cheer on for the last 7-8 years now. So it's good to hold on to that belief, but I also don't think it's going to be a case of, here's 50 million, go and spend it, because it's probably not going to happen like that, in my opinion.
No, I think that obviously new owners they're going to come in and they're going to say everything that you want them to, that they're going to say what they think you want to hear. In terms of obviously a stadium for European football, there's a long way to go before I think Blues can even contemplate the idea of European football. Like, I think just getting out of the championship in itself is a hard enough challenge, to then think that, okay, well, then we can get, once Blues have got promoted, to then think, okay, well, now we can go in there and mix it up with the likes of, even forgetting about what you would call the top six. You've then got like your Brightons, Brentfords, even as much as you guys are going to hate to admit it, your Aston Villas, your Tottenhams, who are all fighting for those remaining European spots. Like for him to come up, for the new owner to come out and say it's like, yeah, it's lovely, it's what you want to hear, but it's such a distant dream at the moment that I think if I hear any Blues fan saying we're going to be in Europe in the next 3 years, I'll probably just not talk to them anymore.
I don't think any serious fan is going to even think about. Like, I'm not even thinking about promotion until one, the stadium's been fixed. Two, there's been some real investment into the training grounds and everything, the infrastructure of the club. Because there's no point in buying all these players to get you to the Premier League and then not having a ground to put fans into and not having the training facilities to make these players better. It's all pointless. You need your infrastructure in place first before you can go on and do anything else. And from what I've heard, the Blues training ground is in desperate need of refurbing and updating. And the ground, obviously, everyone's seen that the bottom half of it hasn't been opened for, was it 3-4 seasons now?
Right, yeah, it's a joke.
There's more pressing matters down the Blues than getting back to the Premier League.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you look at how the club's been run over the past God knows how many years, I think just trying to restore the club to operating like a normal football club would be an achievement in itself. As you say, not even having a full stadium open to all the fans, it's a joke. Especially when the Championship's not the top tier of English football, but it's still a high level of football. And to not even have your stadium sorted out is
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not even the fact that we're in the Championship. We're in the second city. We're the second city, and we've got a stadium that is falling to pieces just through sheer neglect of owners not keeping up to date with it.
Yeah. So I think the one other thing that I would want to talk about on this is what obviously we've touched on it briefly in the sense of what we think this means for the club. But do we look at this now as Birmingham's way back into the Premier League? Like, is there going to be, do you reckon, a 5-year plan? There's going to be a lot of investment. Do you see this now as the beginning of Birmingham starting to rise up?
Well, I've got two different ways of looking at this. So if they are serious in terms of their investment and their plans, i.e., we want to execute this within 2 years' time, I don't think it's the right way of doing that. I think we need to make sure that we stabilise the club and then start building. But I think if they go with that approach, it probably isn't the right thing to keep John Eustace, because I think he's done all right this season for large parts, and I think he's changed the culture in terms of the players and the fans. But I don't think he's going to be one that would be able to get us in the Premier League. I don't know that for certain, because obviously he's only had one season of no funding and whatnot, but I just don't think he's got it in him. So if their ambition is to get us in the Premier League within 2 years, for example, I think they should invest heavily on getting the right management and backroom staff to do that. I don't think that's the right way, but if they want to go that way, then that's what they have to do. Or if they have that 3-year plan and say, look, let's stabilise everything, let's get the connection back with the fans, let's do this, let's fix this, then yeah, keep John Eustace and let's plan in 3 years' time and see where we are. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can judge Eustace on anything, because before him was Bowyer and the football was rubbish, but we had the same team, apart from a few loan signings. Before him was Karanka and the football was rubbish and we had the same team. Before him was was it Monk? Gary Monk?
Would have been Gary Monk, yeah.
Yeah. And
Wouldn't
the football was it was Pep Clotet, yeah. And we started off well and the football went rubbish. Monk we were doing all right with. The last time we were anywhere decent in the league was Gary Rowett, and we sacked him and brought in Zola. And then we had the same sort of players. Harry Redknapp came in and brought in a load of players. And since then, we haven't ever really changed the backbone of the squad. And we've never finished higher than 17th. So I think Eustace is the first time in since probably Monk where we weren't going. We might get relegated this season. It's the first time we've finished anywhere 3 games. We were safe. Normally, we're going into the last game of the season, going, we might get relegated here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a positive, and all he's done is bring in loan players and what's his face, Chong. So I think I'd give him a chance to build a team and see what he can do, because I've got no doubt that he looks at that team and just goes, I ain't got the players here to play the football I want to play. Because he had Kidderminster doing, they were calling them the non-league Barcelona.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I absolutely think we should. I think he should be there for another 3 years. Give him a bit of investment, let him try and get a bit of depth in the squad, let him not have to rely on loans because we can buy players and see where he gets us and put our faith in him.
I like the way that Paul's trying to show us that he's a handyman. First, he picked up a roll of duct tape. Now he's got a torch.
That's my masking tape.
It's
I can't sit here without messing with someone.
Yeah, I think as I said to you earlier on, Ben, I think that John Eustace, he's not the final answer, but he's a start. He's a good starting point to take you where you want to be. You know, it's like you look at Newcastle, for example, and no, I'm not trying to compare the two, but like, I think we've all said that what's his face in charge at Newcastle at the moment?
Eddie Howe.
Eddie Howe, yeah, he's not Newcastle's final answer, but
why is he not the final answer?
Because I mean, it's possible that he is, but I think when you buy a club, when you're sort of like the Qataris, for example, who took over at Newcastle, what they're looking for is they're obviously trying to rival what Man City are doing. And when Man City have got the best manager in the world, or one of the best managers in the world, you would think at some point Newcastle would be asking for the best manager in the world at the same point to compete.
But is Eddie Howe the best manager in the world that's just not been given the basis to be the best manager in the world yet? Because you can't be the best manager in the world without being given the money to buy the best players in the world.
True. I understand what you're saying, but I just think that, well, it's going to be the proof is going to be on what happens next, obviously, because if Eddie Howe performs, like if he gets Newcastle in the Champions League this season, I think it's probably above schedule for them. So then they'll keep him. If he's then winning the Premier League in the next sort of 2-3 years, he's performing above expectations from what they think. But then if Newcastle, for example, dropped out of the top 4, then obviously Eddie Howe will go. You know, it will just be the same as what Man City have done in the past, whereas as soon as one person comes in, like a Pellegrini or a Mancini or a Mark Hughes or whoever, as soon as they don't perform to the standards that they expect them to be at, that manager's then going to go. You know, and Man City went round all of these before they landed on Pep, who I'm not saying Man City would have ever have sacked him at any point, but he's the ultimate goal for any club you want to get Pep or Klopp, someone like that. Now, I'm not obviously saying Blues are in that position, but I don't know whether John Eustace is the manager who's going to take Blues into the Premier League. If Blues then get into the Premier League, is he the manager that's going to keep them in the Premier League? Can he attract the kind of players that they're expecting to sign? Does he know the kind of players? You know, as much as he's done well this season, we haven't seen how well he does in the transfer market. If he had £20 million to spend, would he bring in £20 million worth of quality? Or would it just be another Mark Roberts, for example, and players like that who don't perform? You know, so there's a lot of questions that Eustace has got to answer. But I don't think, me personally, I wouldn't get rid of him now. I'd give him, you know, the summer, give him the funds. As what you said, Paul, I'd focus on what goes on behind the scenes. I'd look at the youth training. I'd look at the training ground. I'd look at the stadium. I'd look at getting everything in place. Because obviously, if you want to be a successful club, that success needs to come from everywhere, not just the players on the pitch. So, you know, there's a lot of investment that needs to go on.
Yeah. And the players that obviously we brought in this season, we don't really know how much of that is Craig Gardner going to final, because we know that he's decent at finding a player. But I don't know how much of this John Eustace turned and said, I want that player. Like, I don't think Chong was a Eustace player, to be honest with you.
Well, he was already in with the Blues, wasn't he, before?
The loan and stuff, yeah. And I think, I don't know, I could be wrong, and Chong's a good player.
Certain players, though, that it doesn't matter whether Like, there's no way that Gardner goes to Eustace and goes, "Oh, we could buy Chong," and he goes, "I don't want him," because he's going to look at that squad and go, "Well, that even if he's not a player I want, he's still better than the squad that I've got."
Yeah.
I just wish.
So, I mean,
I wish he had a right foot.
you got to think as well. Obviously, Kidderminster City would have had no budget, right? And he's done a decent job there because he's obviously had the players and he's started playing how he wants. He obviously doesn't have the team that he wants at Blues, which is fine. He's obviously inherited that team, but
Because
if we then go, well, yeah, no one does. Let's face it. But if we go and give him 20 million now, Paul, would you say that, or would you be confident right now as to what we know that they could go and turn that 20 million into 4 or 5 really good Championship players that could push us into the top half next season?
Well, first of all, can we spend 20 million? Because you've got profit and what is it, sustainability or whatever it is. So, first of all, you've got to look at how much you can actually spend before we start breaking.
Well, what's the rules though? What's the rules though if they're going to upgrade, say, the training ground? If they just sponsored the training ground under Shelby Companies Limited.
That's an offset thing, though, isn't it? So if you spend 30 million, you'd offset that for £20 investment.
It's when it all gets murky and underhanded, isn't it? So,
which they could do that.
Ultimately, if they wanted to spend 20 million and proper go for it, you spend as much money as you like, and then you hope to get promoted before the financial. Because I think financial fair play runs in years of 3. Yep. So if you say it was last year, you've got 3 years where you can spend as much as you want, as long as you get promoted. The EFL won't be able to touch you,
and that's
because you're going to the Premier League. Then it's what Wolves did. It's what the Villa did.
That's the 2 options. If they heavily want to go into it, then they've got to back it, and they've got to get used to saying get someone that they're confident that can do the job. Because if we're going to spend 20 million or 30 million over the course of 2 years, and also we don't get promoted, it's just going to bite us in the arse big time.
What I would like is that we did it properly. We set up the infrastructure and we do it properly. We've had Eustace in charge now, and I don't think he's a bad manager. I don't think he's ever going to set the world alight, but I think I would give him the chance to take us up the league.
I think he's good enough for he's good enough for the project, 100%. If they give him the time.
Yeah, I think
I'm not one for just sacking managers for the sake of it.
No, and I think one of the things you said earlier on, Ben, which I think is quite true, is that you don't want to then become the next Watford. You know, you're pushing for this 3-year promotion before FFP starts to kick in, and you haven't been promoted, and then suddenly, you know, you're 10 games in, you're 12th, sack the manager, bring in someone else.
Yeah, and you've had 14 managers in the space of 18 months.
That's what could happen. If they rush the investment and then rush the plan of what they're trying to do, which we don't know anything about these owners, let's add that into there, then that's something that realistically could happen, because I just think, we can throw money at it.
What worries me is the fact that they could be like that, because it worries me, first of all, that they've called their company Shelby Company Limited, and then you read online about how your man's a big fan of the Peaky Blinders. And then I just sit there thinking, how much is it he wants to buy Birmingham City to get them back to where he thinks they belong? And how much is it just he's bought a Peaky Blinders memorabilia that he gets to play with?
Yeah, that is the other part. Just for anyone who listens to this, part of the reason why he did decide to buy Birmingham was because he was a fan of Peaky Blinders. He then heard the mention of St Andrews on the show, searched it up, found Birmingham, play at St Andrews, bought the club.
It's with Jeremy Dow, right? And obviously Jeremy Dow said, "You like Peaky Blinders, don't you?" He's like, "Yeah, look, this is the club."
Yeah, so
I wonder if he's going to reopen the Garrison then, because the Garrison's been shut for years, hasn't it?
Yeah, we went past the Garrison earlier.
Yeah. But I mean, they did release a statement where they was talking about rejuvenating the area, the local community, investing in youth development, investing in the infrastructure, everything else. Obviously, when people take over clubs, they always say these kind of things.
Yeah, it's all the stuff that they say in it.
So, you know, whatever they say, you know, take it with a pinch of salt until you start to see the actual proof coming out. But, you know, it all sounds promising from the offset.
If John Eustace isn't the manager next season, for whatever reason, then I will take that as it's going to be a harsh couple of years. It might be exciting, it might get up there, I don't know, but it's going to be harsh in terms of management changes. The things that come out in the media and the news, like
It
it's
might
just going
not
to
be
be.
that though. It might just be that it's an American coming in, and he doesn't know much about football, so he just wants a name.
But that's what I
Eustace
said.
isn't a name, is it? Like it's what the Chinese did with Zola. We had Rowett. He wasn't a big enough name, so they thought, well, Zola's a big name. We'll have Zola.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying earlier. If they're going to do that, do it, right? We can't stop them from doing it. But then go and invest heavily in that management. Go and spend £1 million on getting that perfect manager. Do the research and find out. Because if they get rid of Eustace and all of a sudden we get in bloody, I don't know, it's just a championship manager that's a decent manager, you'd be fuming, wouldn't you?
I just hope they keep Eustace and they put the infrastructure in place. He surrounds himself with local people who know the club, who know the area, know what it is to be a Birmingham City fan, and he does it properly.
Yeah, agreed.
Like if I was him, I'd keep Craig Gardner there. I'd keep that, what's his name? Is it Jeremy Dale or whatever he's called?
Jeremy Dale, yeah.
Yeah, I'd keep him on board and carry on chatting to him. Players like Troy Deeney and stuff like that. If you don't want to give him a player's contract because he's too busy doing match of the day or whatever, then give him a contract where he can go and work with the kids, because I think he's great to have around the club.
Absolutely.
Well,
just not Mon Roberts. Get rid of him.
Well,